I have the pleasure of introducing our next speaker, Jennifer Wood. She is the Clinical Trial Recruitment Manager from Henlius. Thank you. Oh.
All right, yeah. I don't mind at all. Okay. Okay, there we go. Hi, my name is Jennifer Wood. I go by Jenny, and I work at Henlius Biotech. We are a small biotech company with our U.S. presence based in Milpitas, California. And we are working on small cell lung cancer studies as well for a medication called serplulimab, which is ending with that MAB, so we've got a monoclonal antibody. And we're looking at it as a first-line treatment for small cell. I am not a doctor, not an MD, not a PhD. I do not have the education that all of our fantastic speakers here have had today, but I do have a lot of passion for clinical research. And lately, I've been learning more and developing a passion for diversity in clinical research, which I know Dr. Sen had a little one-line section about how that's so important, and that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. So this is Mr. Tony Wofford. He runs a nonprofit called the I Choose Life Foundation, where his goal is to educate the Black community about their health care and taking it into their own hands and being, like Joy was, an advocate for your own health. Is that everything okay? Okay. So it's for the Black community to not be left behind anymore when it comes to clinical research. And so what we are doing is trying to bridge the diversity gap. Henlius is very dedicated to this. It's been a very hot topic. The FDA has recently put out guidance where shortly they will be requiring clinical trials to have minority patients, but the numbers have been terrible up to this point. So we've had medications being approved after being tested on people that are receiving the drug, to be fair, but then there are people receiving these drugs who have not had representation during clinical trials. So there are a lot of reasons for that, but we strongly feel that the community needs to be empowered and to confront these disparities. So we've been hearing a lot about clinical trials. Clinical trials are research studies that are they're done not in mice, but in humans. So after they get that preclinical phase, they go, and I'm not trying to talk down to anybody because I know you guys are more well-educated than I am on a lot of this stuff, so just bear with me. Clinical trials will look at drugs, devices, procedures, vaccines to see if they are safe and effective for people to take. So there's different phases of research. Phase one is the first one that occurs. You have a small group of people testing to see how, at a high dose, what kind of side effects are seen. And then as you progress into stage two, you start looking at the effectiveness of the medication, and the studies just get larger and larger, and you end up with these great big phase 3 studies where you've got a lot of people who have the disease that you're testing taking these drugs to see how they do. And they get a lot of data that they're able to put together and submit to the FDA, and that's how they determine if a drug is safe and effective for us to use. So there's been a lot of shady stuff when it comes to research in the past. I'm sure you guys have heard of Tuskegee, what happened with Henrietta Lacks's cell line. There have been a lot of reasons for the African American community especially to be wary very, very wary of clinical research. So one of the things we want to do is to destigmatize it. This is not the only place where we're speaking about this. We've been going up across the country, all over the place, trying to spread this message. And there are guidelines in place by the FDA, by the International Committee, or not committee, the International Community of Researchers. They have guidelines as well to protect the safety and the safety and the privacy of patients that are participating in clinical trials. So we've got laws saying that we have to do it the right way, and there's also guidelines that we follow that say we have to do it the right way. So participants need to represent the populations that have the disease. So there are some statistics. I believe I have a slide in here in a little bit about the participation in clinical trials in terms of, there we go. Only 4% of participants in clinical trials are African American, and that does not match up with the number of African Americans that there are in our beautiful country and in our beautiful world. And this is a statistic that's not on the slides, but when I mentioned those phase 3 studies, the great big ones, they call them pivotal trials. And with the pivotal trials for medications that were approved between 2018 and 2022, a third of those had absolutely zero Black participants, zero. And these are medications that are given to Black people later on, so they need to be part of the conversation. It's important, not just scientifically, but ethically. So why participate in a clinical trial? To see if it helps you, for one. To help answer the questions that all of these researchers that you're meeting here have brought up. Why do these things work? What do we need to look for? And to help find, I think the most important thing is to find new treatments for the future, because it doesn't stop here, right? The world goes on, and we want to help protect and take care of the next generations. So, participating in clinical trials does help to develop treatments for people that will be coming along after you. This is just a little more about the processes that are in place for safety. There is a group that reviews every research study called an institutional review board. Different institutions have their own review boards. And then there are large review boards as well that work all over the world. But they are designed to review each and every one of these research protocols to determine if the risks are lower than the potential benefits, and to make sure that people are protected and that there's minimal risk involved. So let's talk a little bit about the studies that we're working on. A predecessor study of ours did appear on somebody else's slide, and I got a little woohoo out of that, and that was called the ASTROM study. And we are currently working on 2 different studies called the ASTRIDE study and the 302 study. The ASTRIDE study is for extensive stage, and the 302 study is for limited stage, and we're working on them both at the same time. So you guys know this. When we usually give this presentation, we usually have folks who are a little bit more naive to what small cell lung cancer is, and I know that you guys know it's less common than non-small cell. I'm sorry. Yes, it's less common than non-small. But it is so aggressive, it grows and spreads very quickly, as we've heard from a lot of our speakers today. And of course, there's limited stage and extensive stage. It's usually caught in the extensive stage because there's very little symptoms typically when you've only got it in the one lung, which is the limited stage. Once it starts metastasizing, that's when it becomes extensive stage. And that's when you may start having a lot of the symptoms, which is why, CT scans for all, that's how I feel. Because catching it early is so vital, as you all know. So this is just a little bit more about the treatment and how it can return quickly. And what we are trying to do is find new treatments that work better and are tolerated better, fewer side effects, for example, to help preserve the quality of life. So that is what our study is about, to see if we can help people have a longer life and a better quality of life during the longer life. Ooh, tongue-tied there. And to try to prevent the cancer from spreading. So I am a recruitment manager at Henlius, so I am constantly on the look for ways to find patients to participate in clinical trials at Henlius specifically, but I've been in the industry for 20 years, and I've only been doing cancer research for about 6 months, and it has been so educational, and I've really enjoyed learning here today more about cancer and about small cell lung cancer. But if you know anybody who has recently been diagnosed, just let me know, because that's really what we're looking for our study, for folks who are looking for first-line treatment. So just in case you know anybody or speak to your friends, you can talk to me if you're interested. And we can give you information to take to your doctor to talk about it. So this is really a little bit more about the registering for our clinical trials, which isn't really what I'm here to do today. So I just wanted to see if there are any questions about clinical trials, and I'll also give the caveat that like I said, I'm not a clinician, but I can tell you operationally how clinical trials work. I've been doing clinical trials for a very long time, so I can answer all kinds of questions about clinical trials, but probably not the nitty-gritty about small cell. So, but I would welcome any questions about research.
Very much. I just wanted to mention it. Sure. I don't think we've had a speaker today who hasn't emphasized the importance of clinical trials. And I mean, if our patients and caregivers walk away with nothing else, I think that is extremely valuable. But I got to say, the misconception is people think you're guinea pig. People think you're not going to get the same care. You know what? You're probably not. You're going to get a better standard of care because people are watching you a lot more closely than they would with your regular standard of care. But a lot of times also the patients think that's their last hope. Could you address that and just talk to people about how they might be able to, even if they're in remission, there are many trials they might qualify for. Could you just share a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, there are all kinds of trials for people at all different stages. I know somebody mentioned earlier phase 4 studies where they're looking at people after the medication has been approved, kind of long term. There is a really good website, clinicaltrials.gov. And a lot of the studies that we've seen flashed up, you'll see this thing called an NCT number, and that's from clinicaltrials.gov. So it's like the identifying number for the government for this particular trial. And there's all kinds of different studies. One's for healthy volunteers, so people that are just perfectly healthy, and all the way to people that are for drugs that are already on the market. So we've got all kinds of studies that are available. But as far as to touch on the level of care, the clinical research studies are protocol driven. So every time there's a clinical trial, there's a very thick document that the doctors are quite familiar with that details everything that happens during the study, the scientific background as to why the study is being done. And before anyone joins a study, there it is. Go through a process called the informed consent process, which actually continues on throughout the course of research. The consent process is never over because you always want to be informed about what it is that you're doing. And when you're going through that consent process, they talk about how closely you're going to be followed. You'll come in for visits every X number of days or weeks. And They talk about the potential side effects that they've seen in people up to this point. They go into so that you can make an informed decision about whether you think that the benefits outweigh the risks. But frequently, the visits that you have are going to be more frequent and involve more testing than what you would see in standard of care. So you often do get a closer eye on you when you're participating in a clinical trial. Yeah.
Thank you. Montessa, Barbara, did you guys have questions?
She has my mic. Oh, yeah.
I got you.
Oh, no. Oh, okay. It's okay. And through technical, we work the issues. But I have a twofold question. So a lot of patient disparities. So a lot of patients are treated in their community hospital where the medical team might not be suggesting clinical trials. So how would you advise that patient to advocate for themselves? And do you work with those community hospitals to prompt them when to suggest trials and how they suggest the trial to patients?
Sure. Thank you. Okay. Hello? Okay, great. So yes, we do work in community hospitals as well. We also have they're called research sites where we have the doctors that they call principal investigators. So the principal investigators have their research sites, and some of them are at the large academic institutions, and then others are community-based. So unfortunately, it is difficult to learn about clinical trials if you're not with a physician that is savvy to clinical trials. So you really, a lot of the times, do have to ask about it, and they may not know, which is why doing a lot of research is important and being your own advocate and advocating for those that you love. There are many places online to find information about joining clinical trials. Clinicaltrials.gov, as I mentioned. It is somewhat intuitive to navigate that, but there are other places as well. If you do Google searches for clinical trials, small cell lung cancer, then boop, things will pop up for you for sure. So it's really just a matter of how educated your physician is. So we have folks like science liaisons who go out and speak to physicians about these kinds of things to educate them and train them. And that is another very important aspect of clinical research enrollment is the buy-in from the physicians and educating them as well to advocate for you. We need advocacy.
Personally, I was shocked about the low participation by Black Americans. Mm-hmm. Is that being addressed is it a clinician failure? Is it a issue with the Black community having a history of being misused by the medical community? And is there anything that's actively being done to try and address those issues? To me, it's troubling.
It is troubling, and I think it is a systemic thing. I really do. There is a lot of fear, and I would say, rightfully so. I would be very worried as well. But I mean, can you imagine taking a medication that nobody had ever tested in a woman? I can't. That just seems unconscionable. So yeah, the industry is really starting to come around to it, and so is the FDA. So there are definitely, and I've seen a lot of speakers about this kind of thing at different conferences and the like. So it's starting to pick up steam, which I'm glad for, and I'm sad that I feel it's mostly because the FDA has started saying something about it, and the industry kind of has to fall into line afterwards. I'd rather it be that we were more proactive, but the progress is being made, even if it forced progress. I'm still glad that there's progress being made. Yes.
I was just going to add to what Jennifer was talking about and some of the comments that have been made. Yes, it's very troubling. It's very disappointing for our community. I have a personal passion since I've been in clinical research in 1999 to try to get more representation from our community. trying to help educate our community, trying to help break the stigma from the past for our community, and help them understand how if we continue down that path, it's only going to make it worse for us. We're not going to be able to progress. We need help. Anybody who agrees that we need to be more involved, speak up for us, especially if you don't look like us, because that helps us if we have more voices speaking for us. And as far as recruitment, I know we have some clinicians in here. I would just say, get creative, think outside the box, learn what is going to be needed to reach our community, and start to use those measures to help educate our people about clinical research. And we're in a unique opportunity right now for the company that we work for, because they're actually investing in going out and doing what we can to educate African Americans and minorities about clinical research and the importance of participating, and not just for our lung cancer study, but just overall. So, like we've done I don't know how many people in here are familiar with Chubb Rock, who is a hip hop artist, but we actually got an opportunity to go do a radio show in Atlanta. It was just a conversation with some of us that work for Henlius, and they are playing that on the iHeart radio station. So that's another way, because I know as an African American, we listen to the radio. We may not look at TV, we may not be looking at CNN, but they're listening to the radio. So I know that that's a way to reach our community. So that's what I mean when I say, putting it on TV may be one thing, but just think, how can I get to the Black people or to the minorities that I want to reach? So.
Thank you, Melody.
And what is the criteria again from NCI? When because I know there is a criteria now that they have to include some level of diversity.
Yeah, the FDA has put out guidance recently. It's not the law yet, but it's going to be where I believe it's 15% of clinical trial patients will need to be minority patients, which is still probably a little on the low side, but it's better than the big fat zero that we're seeing in a lot of studies. And that number 0 that I gave earlier, it's not an outlier. The median was 6 for these pivotal trials. 6 people in studies that had hundreds or thousands of people. So just that statistic just shocks me and makes me mad. Yeah.
Minorities and thank you may be hesitant, right? So what happens if the standard is, what'd you say, 15%? What happens if they don't get to that 15%? Does the trial continue, or does it hold off till you get to the 15%?
I do not know the answer to that, I will tell you. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's still... Yeah,
Okay.
There was with one of the vaccine trials, the Moderna one, they actually put that one on hold to try to bring in more minority patients. So I can extrapolate that that's probably what would be expected, is to hold it and get the numbers that you need before you can move on. So there's going to be, time is money, and that'll drive things.
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, you really need to do outreach, right? And go out, because the minority population, I think of Tuskegee, I can't say it, Tuskegee Airmen, right? But then on the flip side of that, if they're putting trial medication on hold because they can't get the 15%, everybody's losing.
And they're going to invest the money in something else.
Yeah.
Recruiting a diverse population.
Right.
I'm Hispanic. Yeah. I'm not in the whole category, but I just think that it's the same thing with Hispanic. Miami, where I'm originally from, yeah, data. Data that will invest the money in data, but in Chicago, where I'm from, I don't even know Juanita, and you guys probably know.
excuse me, with, small cell lung cancer. But I really don't know, even though I've lived there long enough, but Miami is my home, and I can understand the ladies there. People, it's not only the Black American, it's that they don't know how to come out. Like, I come out and now I put it in my Facebook, and by the way, it's called Me So Lucky. And I'm okay with it, and I am blessed and I'm grateful. People will not, it's such a, for women, stigma. Did you smoke? Whatever. But I don't believe that they will stop helping for 15%. I think that you guys, everybody could reach that and above. If we try.
We should, yeah.
Look at that one over
Let's
there.
take one
Look at
more
you.
question.
Come on now.
I know you had the
Yes.
mic. Go ahead. You could ask your last question.
And yeah, I don't mean that they stopped the research and stopped helping people, but more that they kept the enrollment period open longer to keep bringing people into the study. When I say stopped the research, I didn't mean that they said, no, pull the plug. I meant that they stopped the submission to the FDA. They kept doing the study, kept bringing people in, but the submission was held until they met those numbers. And I believe Moderna actually they did that willingly. It wasn't something that the FDA required. They just did that, extended the enrollment of the study.
My question has to do with the minorities, whether it be Asian American, Mexican American, Black American, Somali American. The research, and maybe some of the researchers can address this, put slides up on the screen that show that there's not a discernible difference between what they look at in a mouse and what they look at in a human. We're human beings. How much separation does there have to be between any particular race as to whether this affects them differently? I mean, if it's known that it affects them differently, maybe there should be something done, but if they can't tell the difference between a mouse and a human being when they look at something on a microscope, we're all human. We're all in this together. Yes, it's nice to have participation of everybody that's involved, but does it really matter in the end?
There are blood pressure medications that are not as safe for African Americans as they are for Caucasians. So it's not just looking at things under a slide, and that there. I don't know if there are any clinicians who can say this more eloquently than I can about the blood pressure medications, for example. But there are differences in how people. Yes, I would love to hear from you, Dr. Lovely.
So I missed your talk. I apologize. I was actually doing tumor board and presenting one of my patients, because the life of a clinician is one in which we, even at meetings, are talking about our patients at night, on weekends, because that's the passion that drives us. And so I think, first of all, I want to say we have one common enemy here, and the common enemy is cancer. And so we're all on the same team against that. So your point is well taken. That said, in order to get everyone the best outcomes for whatever they're battling, whether it's cancer or heart disease or diabetes or rash or anything, we have to think about people as individuals. And everybody has different things that they bring to the table. We are born with different unique identities. We grow up with different things in our lives. We have different social factors around us. We don't treat disease, we treat people. And so when we think about treating anything, and not just small cell lung cancer, not just lung cancer, not heart disease, not anything, it is really a summation of all the tests that we look at, the MRIs, everything, blah, 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 all the fancy stuff. And we love fancy stuff. But it is also the person sitting in front of us, what other things they have going on in their lives, who they are as an individual, what they bring to the table, what their social life is as well. And so it's very hard to distill it down to, let's make a treatment plan that works for everyone, because a treatment plan that works for one individual is not going to work for another. So thinking about diversity is incredibly important. But diversity, there's as much diversity as there are individuals in this room. And so we have to think about that in order to bring about personalization to care. It is very challenging. And I would say it's challenging because, and this is my personal opinion, you may all recognize this, and the things that we don't talk about, honestly, is how much the healthcare system is really suffering right now in the post-pandemic world. What are the challenges that you face with just interfacing with your physicians on a day-to-day basis? So we love research. I drink the Kool-Aid of research every day. Love it, love it, love it, love it. But there's also the other factors that we're dealing with here that make delivery of research difficult in the day-to-day realm, which is, let's be honest, like how long do people sit to get their blood draws? How long do you have to stay on the hold to make your clinic appointments? How long do you sit in a waiting room? The things that affect your quality of life as a patient. So there are factors that we have to fix in the healthcare system that also play into the delivery of research, but we want to personalize care. That means thinking about racial and ethnic diversities. It means thinking about men versus women. It means thinking about whether you live in a city or a rural area, because that's another thing that factors in, whether you live 4 hours from a major center or 4 minutes. You can't distill this down to one simple, like, hey, we can fix this easily. It will take a village. It will take every single person in this room. Everyone is unique. We're fighting the common enemy. Let's fight that common enemy together. Thank you.
Thank you.